Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Namaduhu wa nasalli ala Rasulih al-Kareem. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This video is about Surah Rum, which is chapter 30 of the Quran, and specifically verse 53. So I'll first read the translation of this verse, and then read the translation by the Ahmedi translators of the same verse. The translation is, "And you cannot guide the blind away from their error. You will only make hear those who believe in our verses, so they are Muslims." That is in submission to Allah. Notice here, it's very important that the believers here, the Quran is mentioning, those who are believers, they are the Muslims. So anybody who's not a Muslim is not considered a believer. They may be thinking they're believers, but the Quran does not consider them believers. So just imagine, just look at this. You will only make hear those who believe in our verses, so they are Muslims. So anyone who is not believing in the verses of the Quran is not considered a believer from the Islamic standpoint. So anybody who thinks that Christians and Jews and others are believers, they are not following the Quran. Look at the translation by Muhammad Zafarullah Khan of the same verse. His translation is, "Thou canst not make the dead hear, nor the deaf hear when they turn their backs, nor canst thou guide the blind out of their error. Thou canst make only those hear who would believe in our signs and submit." This is a translation by Muhammad Zafarullah Khan. It doesn't use the word Muslim. So a reader can very easily think that this is not a reference to the Muslims. So a person who is not a Muslim can also be a believer. This is a completely distortion of the message of the Quran, complete distortion of the message of the Quran. And Muhammad Asad makes the same mistake in his translation. According to his translation, he writes, "And verily thou canst not make the dead hear, and so too thou canst not make the deaf of heart hear this call, when they turn their backs on thee and go away. Just as thou canst not lead the blind of heart out of their error, none canst thou make hear thy call save such as are willing to believe in our messages and thus surrender themselves unto us." He also leaves the word Muslim out. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically mentions Muslim, making something which is so clear in the Quran and making it confusing to the readers is not giving the message of the Quran. وآخر الدعوانا إن الحمد لله رب العالمين.